A lot's been said recently about the sheer scale of Australia's ice epidemic. The Australian Crime Commission describes it as a higher risk to the Australian community than all other drugs. And those risks may be more wide-reaching than you think. You're about to hear one woman tell her alarming story of working as a paramedic while trying to manage her own full-blown addiction to crystal methamphetamine. Ellie Ward reports from Tasmania.
Operation Catalyst, and I was part of the Australian Army training team. So we trained the Iraqi army and we were mentors to them to try and rebuild their army.
In 2006, Christy Collins did a tour of duty in Iraq. The former army medic struggled to cope with life afterwards.
I'd jump in a car and I'd be looking for IEDs, and I was back home. So, I mean, that sort of was a habit that I was like, oh, I didn't realise how much that affected me. Or I'd hear a loud noise and sometimes I would shudder, or, you know, fireworks, I'd shudder. So those sort of things.
To escape, she began meddling in drugs.
It was more ecstasy, and that was it was a thing that was readily available living in Darwin. It's a bit of a party culture.
Ms. Collins.
The whole time I was employed, but I was highly addicted 2 years before I resigned. I would probably be using every day then.
Ms. Collins hit rock bottom shortly after her 30th birthday.
And when I look back, it's disgusting that I was doing that to people and their families, and going and treating these people, because I would hate someone to go to my family that way as well.
She was pulled over by a police officer after visiting a drug dealer.
They pulled me up and they searched my car, found a bag of ice, and then I was arrested and taken into custody.
One of the police officers who arrested her was an army reservist and suggested she seek help through Veterans Affairs. She says that's proven invaluable, particularly the counselling, which has helped get to the root of why she took drugs.
I've got borderline personality and I was diagnosed with that, and post-traumatic stress. So they're two, and substance abuse was secondary to that. So I think I used drugs to self-medicate.
Throughout, Christy has kept a journal and taken photographs of herself at her lowest.
I'm just hoping that, you know, this is going to make people aware that it can happen to anybody, not just the people that they think it will happen to. It can happen to anybody.
Are you aware that the latest National Drug Strategy Household Survey shows Tasmania has had the largest increase in illicit drug use of any state per population?
Health Minister Michael Ferguson said budget pressures were limiting the government's ability to respond.
With open hands acknowledge a service gap with drug rehabilitation on the North West Coast. Now, Madam Speaker.
The National Centre for Education and Training on Addiction at Flinders University in South Australia has been identifying high-risk workforce groups. Deputy Director Ken Pidd says they found the highest drug use is in the construction, transport, manufacturing and hospitality sectors.
Emergency services is also an industry sector that can have high prevalence rates, and it's largely due to any industry where there's an elevated risk of stress and safety tends to be a high risk group.
Christy Collins says there should be routine drug testing of emergency service workers.
I'm administering drugs as well while I'm on drugs. It's not appropriate either. One error and it's someone's life.
There is no nationally consistent approach to drug testing.
No, there's not. It is up to each of those agencies to establish their own testing regimes.
Joe Murphy from Australian Business Lawyers says the states and territories have moved towards a national approach in workplace relations and health and safety.
There's no reason why there should be an ongoing discussion about perhaps a national approach to regulation in relation to drug testing.
The Tasmanian government says it's open to discussing a national approach. However, Mr Murphy warns there is still a way to go before the science is right. The Fair Work Commission endorses on-site oral fluid testing, but there's currently no national accreditation for it by the National Testing Authority.
The authority identified that there were technical issues with the testing, the accuracy and reliability of the testing, and they withdrew accreditation.
Come on.
Clean for almost a year, Christy Collins is working on a book about her experiences and a campaign for better services for addicts wanting help.
You've got middle class, high class people using the drug. You've got children starting to meddle in it. It's one of the most readily and easily available drugs compared to any other drug.